Jigme Punzo Jala Soranda Gongja Toban Vora Shinji Lo, Gongja Toban Vora Shinji Lo, Gongja Toban Vora Shinji Lo.
The supreme, profound, and sublime Dharma is difficult to encounter in a billion eons. Now I see it, hear it, receive it, and kept it. I vow to attain the meaning of the Tathagata. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme Bodhicitta. Now let us continue with the class on the Ksitigarbha Sutra. This is a text that is permeated by great blessings. It is quite a supreme teaching. And we can see that from history as well. Why is that? It is because there are lots of recorded personal stories relating to the practice, the people who practice on the Ksitigarbha Sutra. I think whenever we have time, I will share some stories with you. Just as when I was giving teachings on the Diamond Sutra, I would share some of the stories. Some of the practitioners who practice those sutras and their personal experiences and those stories about those. In fact, there are many people who would chant and study and contemplate the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and they received great blessings and benefits. Some of the sutras, some of those recorded experiences and stories, in fact, I've translated them into Tibetan language as well. I can't remember how many stories I've translated, but I thought it was really important for me to translate that because those stories were not included in the Tibetan. It's not available in Tibetan, and I thought it would be wonderful to have the stories available in Tibetan language as well as the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Whenever we're studying any texts, if you were to only rely on listening to one class and skim through the text without refer to any other commentaries, I think this is really not as beneficial to you. You can only plant a virtuous root, but that's it. In fact, if you have time, you should try to read more commentaries and reference books on that particular teaching. In this way, you will be able to benefit other sentient beings later as well. If you have such enthusiasm and such longing to the teaching, I think you will definitely be able to use that teaching to benefit beings later. I don't have the oral transmission of Ksitigarbha Sutra. I don't have the lineage. However, I think with the blessings, with the unusual blessings from Ponsokgon Rinpoche, I in fact have great faith towards this teaching. And maybe by listening and teaching like this, it will be of great blessings to all of us, and later on we can propagate this teaching. If you were to receive the blessings of this teaching, then your attitude and your feeling towards it will be completely different. Later on, after you finish listening to this teaching, and people would be able to receive blessings from it, and then you would think that I would give them empowerment of the Ksitigarbha Sutra empowerment. So let us chant the mantra of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in order to dispel the obstacles of this world and let the sentient beings to be reborn in the Sukhavati.
上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波拉生长龙求多掉生上周三花三花千波赛一娘波生长龙求多掉生我赛一娘波切基督阶段在巴木龙天在你比蓝莓一些减脂减脂定着困了当送点儿修我刚才说
As I said earlier, whenever you have opportunities later, you can then give other blessings with the name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva as well as the statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. If people were to ask you, can you give me an empowerment? And then you can place the statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva statue and put it on his head and then chant the name. Some people probably don't even understand what empowerment is. They just feel like if you were to put something on their head, and that's the empowerment. And then you can say that the blessing, the Amrita of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is already sprinkled on your head. Now you've received the fourth Abhisheka. That was a joke. But of course, what I meant was that we definitely should propagate the teaching and the practice of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. And we can use various methods. Of course, first of all, we have to be very passionate about it. We have to have a great enthusiasm about this. I think this kind of enthusiasm has something to do with your previous connections, your karmic connections. If you were to have a better connection with Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and the teaching on it, then you will be able to have such a faith, just as nowadays people would call their hobbies as passionate. They would say, I'm passionate about arts, I'm passionate about Buddhism, I'm passionate about Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's teaching, I'm passionate about Avalokiteshvara's teaching, and so on. And in Buddhism, we call it faith. And faith, in fact, is quite different on each and every one. and it has a great connection to our previous karma, our love and passion towards people, towards bodhisattvas, towards sentient beings. Those partially could be brought by could be nurtured in our later days of education and study and so forth, but a great part of it is also connected to our previous karma and previous virtuous and evil deeds. Anyhow, in our lifetime, if we have enough conditions, and then we should try to benefit sentient beings with the teachings of Ksitigarbha. So let's continue with today's teaching. Previously, we've already learned that after the passing of Shakyamuni Buddha's mother, she then was reborn into the Triyastrimsha heaven, and then the Buddha Shakyamuni then went to the Triyastrimsha's heaven and gave teachings to his mother over there. This is a teaching in order to repay the kindness to his mother. And then there's another teaching that Shakyamuni Buddha gave in order to repay the kindness of his father, and that's the Sutra on father meeting the son. And that was taught in the format of a conversation between father and son. In the mainland tradition, people consider that this sutra as a filial piety sutra, as a way to repay the kindness of parents in this lifetime and all parents, all sentient beings who's been our parents. And in order to repay all of their kindness, the great masters would give teaching on the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and sometimes they would study or chant that as well in order to repay the kindness. People in our audience, let it be that you have a good connection to your parents or not. In fact, they do. They have shown you great kindness by giving you birth and by nurturing you and so forth. Therefore, by listening to this teaching and studying it or chanting it and having faith in this sutra, it is a way to repay the kindness of our parents. When we were learning the Sutra of Filial Piety, it talks about the 5 ways of leading the parents into studying the Dharma. It would be really wonderful. But nowadays, some monastics or some lay practitioners who can't really stay with their parents, especially when they're sick and so on, it would be the best to repay their kindness by dedicate the merit, or slowly ask them to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Those are great ways of repaying the kindness of parents. Our ways of repaying kindness is very different than the worldly ways. Worldly ways would include that having grandchildren, having lots of wealth, or spend lots of time with them so that the parents would be content. But those are ways of only benefiting them in this lifetime, but we can use a way to benefit them by using the way of dedicate merit that would benefit them for lifetimes. This time, when I decided to give the teaching on the Ksitigarbha Sutra, I thought that in order to repay the kindness of the parents of lifetimes, this is my intention. And when I was translating it, that was my intention as well, though I didn't really write it down. When we listen to this sutra, we should make the aspiration that May all the parents in the past, present, and future, may all the parents of all sentient beings to be alleviated from their suffering and eventually have a great happiness. We should have such kind of aspiration. And though from a short term they may not experience anything substantial such as receiving money and so forth, but after this kind of chanting and this kind of aspiration, in fact, it can definitely benefit them in lifetimes, and that's a way of repaying the kindness of parents. Now let's look at this Ksitigarbha Sutra. In fact, this one is a bit different than the other sutras because there are sutras that's taught by the Buddha in the human world, then the audience would have more human beings. There are the ones that's taught in the Naga's palace, then the Nagas would be in as the majority of the audience. And some of the teachings are taught in the celestial realm, such as this one that is taught in the Ksitigarbha heaven. Other than bodhisattvas, there's no other beings, even Shariputra or Madhikalayana. I don't think there's arhats either. The majority of the audience were the ones from different celestial realms, from the 6 celestial realms, celestial heavens of desire realm of, and then 17 heavens of the form realm and 4 heavens of the formless realms, as well as the 8 classes of rakshas and ghosts and spirits, as well as Mara. They all then came to the Ksitigarbha heaven. So just as if a teacher were to give a teaching in the West, then majority of people would be the ones in that country or around that area. Though there are people who could travel or take airplane trips to that place, but the majority of them would be from that area. And in this sutra actually was taught by Shakyamuni Buddha in celestial realm. Many may think that since there are so many audience, how can there be so many ghosts and spirits and so many inconceivable beings? In fact, that is very much possible. When we're studying the Vimalakirti Sutra, we can understand that in a small house of Vimalakirti could in fact contain so many people, then don't mention about Ksitigarbha's heaven. In the Ksitigarbha's heaven, according to Abhidharma, or the treasury of wish-fulfilling jewels, we can say that there are many beautiful natural palaces and gardens and ponds, and even the roads. They are really beautiful, and all of those appear because of the merits of the celestial beings. When I went to certain Western countries around the 90s, I admired those countries quite a bit, especially when I went to Japan and New York, and I thought that, wow, is this place heaven? But now when I think about that, everything changed. Everything's just like a dream and illusion. Many of the external conditions are not as good as it used to be, so all things are constantly in change. Of course, it is very much related to management as well. Larangar is not celestial realm, but still, I really hope that all of our practitioners from all different aspects in your management, in the hygiene, in beautifying our environment, we should put more efforts into it. Around noon, I was telling the Khenpos and Khenmos over here, I told them that we should have a group, environmental group, that we really didn't have it before, but we should, because in general, all of our environment is definitely better than it used to be. But since in the large cities, in the cities that's more cultivated, they all have environmental groups. Therefore, I think we should pay more attention to our environment. Let it be the restaurant, hotel, or shrine hall, hospital, and shops. Not only we need those signs, we really need some warning signs for slippery, especially slippery or watch out signs, because some of the places are indeed very difficult to walk through, especially for old people. I myself am not so clumsy, but if I almost fell 2 times, I think there are people who don't have good health, or older people, they might fall. We need definitely to have some signs to warn them that this is slippery, or be aware, things like such. We need to use both languages, both Tibetan and Chinese. Be aware, you don't want to stick it everywhere. We should, in fact, be more professional to have plans. This is quite important in terms of the color, the shape, and the position, the placement of such kind of signs. We should pay more attention to it. Let's not put signs everywhere. That's not necessary. Later on, when the tourism opens up again, there would be tourism who's never been here before and come here. And then I think in that way we need to have some changes in our hygiene, in our the overall cleanness of this place. We need to beautify and dignify our place. The practitioners, the monastics, I know that you have great inner merit, but we need to show that inner merit a bit as well to dignify ourselves. It's quite important to have the exterior appearance dignified as well. According to the Shakya aphorism, where it says that if people do not have dignified experience, others might slander that person. As a monastic, if you live in a house that looks quite, it looks, in fact, quite sketchy, and you hang everything on top of it, though you may attain rainbow body right away, but people don't see it. People won't know it at all. People won't see your inner qualities. I think many people do have the perfect qualities of precept, samadhi, and wisdom, but if your appearance has too much difference from your inner qualities, then others may slander you. That applies to our shrine hall, to our classroom, and so on. The other day, I asked Khenpo Khenmos to supervise their own classroom as well as their departments in charge. But later on, I didn't see that they carried out that in action at all. I've already mentioned it 1 or 2 times, but if they don't do it, I think that's quite stubborn. This is very small, but for Dharma practitioners and Compos and Kummels, you should take care of the classroom. Of course, it's not a classroom that belongs to them, it belongs to everybody. But once you walk into their classroom, everything's so cluttered, and the flowers everywhere, the lamps everywhere, everything's everywhere. You just feel really chaotic. Of course, there are classrooms that they have beautiful tanka arrangement, and Buddha statue arrangement looks very dignified, very beautiful. So the rooms are very different. Patrul Rinpoche in the preliminary practices already said that during the seventh branch of offering, though the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas do not have grasping towards beautiful or not, but when you're offering even 7 glasses of water, it must be pure and dignified in such a way. If we feel that it looks really beautiful, then we will be able to get great merit. I think about that. Everybody's place to live, your dress and your office, your room, your bedroom, and so on, all of those, in fact, are parts of you as a person. I think this is really important to remember. All of those says something about you. Our road are so cluttered nowadays. In cities, on the passengers' path as well as the blind ways, in fact, they can't put anything on top of that to block people's ways. And what I noticed was that there are people who would put the garbage bins in the middle of the road. I was telling the supervisors the other day who was in charge of our environment, and said that, why could you please not put the garbage bin in the middle of the road, because even the cities don't do that. You should not clutter everything in the middle of the road. If there are people who do not have good eyesight and walk by here, they may hurt themselves. So I've said that to them for a few times, and nothing works. I also told them that it would be best to make a cement sign so that they can keep the garbage bins there. I even took pictures to show the supervisors, but I don't think they really took that to heart. Maybe I'm just being very picky. Let it be a city, and Larangar sometimes is called a city for Buddhists. But if we only say that we're a city but do not manage this environment properly, then I think it's not going to be very helpful to anyone. In terms of the Buddhist practice centers, we also need to beautify it, and we need to keep it pure so that we will so that our inner qualities may show. Other than sleeping and eating, I think majority of the time we spend in listening, contemplation, and practice. There are people who take too long in eating. I was having a meeting with lots of Dharma teachers, and I was going to leave, and about half of the people still haven't finished eating. They really spend a long time in eating. Today I listened to a speech given by an English teacher. He said that he needs to sleep for 10 hours a day. I think that's too long. I don't think it's necessary to spend so much time on eating and sleeping. Otherwise, you won't have enough time to study and practice. In terms of cherishing our time, there are people who are slacking off, but other than that, majority of us, in fact, I think you do spend your time in studying. Those are the inner wisdom. I think your inner wisdom definitely is much better than a lot of people. But in terms of the external actions, I really hope that in Larongar, we can pay more attention to our exterior environment, such as planting trees and grass and plants and so on, to beautify our environment. Everybody has such a responsibility to take care of our external environment. Don't think that it's Khenpo's business. Wherever you live, you have responsibility to take care of that environment, to take care of the small environment that you live in, as well as the grand environment. If you do not keep the environment clean, especially the grand environment, the community environment clean, it could cause negative karma, just as we studied in the Sutra on praising the noble qualities of the Sangha. It says that if one were to make offering to the Sangha, make the Sangha happy, then that's great merit. On the other side, it would be of negative karma. There are people who would throw their personal garbage or their personal construction garbage in the public area. You should think very carefully that because that is a public and community garbage bin, you should try to take care of your personal, especially personal construction garbage, rather than throwing them into the community garbage bin. That action is indeed not very virtuous. I was telling Khenpos and Khenmos, if you were to live in a certain area, you should not count on other people to work and serve you. You should work and serve the others. You should serve the Sangha, just as making offering, just like during the offering during the Dharma assemblies, majority of the times it is provided by the lamas and jumos. We should not think that we are not the we should not think just as the non-practitioners that we're the ones to enjoy, we're not the ones to take care of. Anyhow, wherever you are, to serve the Sangha, to benefit the Sangha, in fact, it would be beneficial for you in terms of karma and for yourself. So I think this is not, the Sukhavati is not the perfect pure land, and we really need to take up the responsibility of taking care of our environment and our personal hygiene and so on. In terms of this, whomsoever you are, once you arrive at a certain place, you should blend into that area, you should get used to that area. According to the Sakya aphorism, where it says that people need to know what they need to do. When people look at others, they are good at scrutinize others, but when it's time to scrutinize themselves, they get their vision gets bad. In terms of us who's enjoying everything, but not providing service to anyone. On the contrary, not only not providing service and benefit to others, we then somehow provide some harm. I don't think that would be a great cause for your own happiness. Now, in terms of Ksitigarbha Sutra, that is translated by Ksitigarbha. He's from Uyghur, and his tongue was not burned. His tongue actually stayed just as Kumarjiva's tongue was not burned. Maybe because the Uyghur translator's tongue is harder, it did not get burned. Ksitigarbha doesn't have much of the information left about him, but when Buddhism was quite prosperous, he translated lots of precious sutras, including Avatamsaka Sutra as well, Prajna Paramita Sutra, and many precious sutras that's brought by great translators. Ksitigarbha is considered as a great translator. In Tibet, we would call these kind of translators who've made great contribution to Buddhism as the manifested translators. The great masters would often pay reverence and remember their kindness at the beginning of giving teaching. They would remember the great panditas and the great translators. Deva would also do that as well. He usually pay reverence and remember the great kindness of the translators who brought the sutras and shastras to Tibet. As we've studied yesterday, Uyghur area, that is now Xinjiang. In fact, Buddhism was very prosperous in that area at the time, but because of the changes of history, then Buddhism slowly faded in that area. But look at the history in Tang Dynasty in Kucha Kingdom. At that time, Buddhism indeed was very prosperous, and I would fathom that the habit of people in that area is probably very similar to the now Tibet. Through the journals and biographies of great masters, we can see that people around that area pay great reverence to the monastics, and in each and every homes they would have tall stupas built for in each household, and they also would make specific or specially dedicated residence for monastics. I think it's very similar to the now Tibet. Nowadays, in fact, in Tibet, each and every household, if their environment permits, then they would actually keep a shrine hall or a shrine room where they would keep the tanka and statues in that specific shrine room. Young people probably don't do that anymore, but in the Tibetan tradition, it is like that. And I think in the Xinjiang area, it's probably similar as well. And then around the Song Dynasty, slowly, because of the invasion of Islam in in around about a few hundred years, Buddhism completely disappeared over there. It didn't happen overnight, but it took them a long time. I think as Buddhists, we should pay attention to this. What do I mean by pay attention to this? I don't mean that we should compete with other religions. I don't mean that we should wage war with other religions. That's not what I meant at all. In fact, what I meant was that we should pay attention to other religions, how they slowly erode Buddhism. Because without paying attention, Buddhism or Buddhists could get corrupted without realizing it at all, and that's very terrifying, because Buddhism in fact is very kind and very compassionate, and maybe because of that people would take you very lightly and would think that Buddhism is very weak. There are people who are completely selfish and would want to in fact, their action is completely based on their selfish goals. Just look at some of the selfish emperors in history. In fact, lots of their decisions are not based on the people's benefit, but for their own benefits. Look at the Crusaders in history. Christianity and Islam waged war for over 200 years, and they call that war holy war. In fact, there is nothing holy about it. Whatever tag you give to it, in fact, is not holy. War is very cruel. There is nothing beautiful or nothing great about it. However, those people would beautify such kind of war by saying that people whomsoever sacrifice themselves in this war would be reborn in heaven realm, and there's no need to go through any other process, but they would directly born in heaven realm, and they can be called heroes. And in fact, nowadays lots of terrorism would use that name as well. They would beautify their selfish goal with the name of religion. That is why lots of countries do not unify religion with politics, because once they do that, many people would camouflage their true intention with religion, and they have their hidden agendas. I think people, in fact, probably have lots of experience in that throughout history. Throughout history, there are lots of people, not only they don't have religion, they in fact they are quite against of religion, and that's understandable, because there were lots of people who would use the name of religion to achieve their selfish goal and harm innumerable number of sentient beings and people. In fact, in our life, in our modern life, it's similar as well. There are people who would use the term, the name of religion, and talk about kindness and compassion and all of these terms, but their actions, in fact, are completely different than what they preach, because they are mundane beings, and mundane beings have their hidden agendas for their selfish intentions. Anyhow, there are wars use the name of religion, and whatever name they would put on that kind of war, whatever kind of beautifying tags we put on that war, it doesn't make that war holy or beautiful at all. So war or holy war, whatever they are, in fact, it all happened throughout history, but that's not how Buddhism would fight fight any battle. In fact, the battle of Buddhism is the battle against the root of our ignorance. And the weapon that we use is the weapon of wisdom and compassion. In the 400 verses of Madhyamika, it says that Shakyamuni Buddha, by observing in fact, the Shakyamuni Buddha would observe and see the enemy, the true enemy is affliction, but not the sentient beings who have affliction. The sentient, in fact, the afflictions, the 84,000 afflictions are the enemy, but not the sentient beings who have those afflictions. That is why Buddhism have lots of bodhisattvas with wrathful appearances and have some symbols of weapons and so on. But those symbols of weapons are a tool or tools to destroy the ignorance, but not to destroy sentient beings. I think people should understand that. The teachings of Buddhism, many people probably won't be able to understand because there are so many religions nowadays, and some say 3,000, some say 1,000, but so many religions, and in each religion they would consider their religion as the best. But how can we see, and why do we see that Buddhism is indeed the one with the great compassion and wisdom? Because first of all, Buddhism is under the guidance or under the teaching of the Buddha, the main teacher or the main guide of certain religion, of each religion is in fact really important. Some of the guide or teacher of the religion are gods, and some of them are human beings, and so on. Some have lineage and some don't. But the teacher or the guide of our religion is Shakyamuni Buddha. Now let's analyze, let's look and observe if his teaching, if his wisdom has any harm or create any harm through the valid cognition, the inference, and the teaching of the truth. Through the three aspects, we can be very sure that there's no harm at all. Therefore, we would take refuge of him, and then we can take refuge of his dharma and his sangha. And then that's the correct way of taking refuge. Otherwise, if you don't understand that as a Buddhist, if everybody believe in Dharma, therefore I believe in Buddha Dharma, this is really not wise. You're only following other people's ideas and opinions. Many people who give up their religion during Cultural Revolution, in fact, are such kind of people, and there are people who don't give up because they have their own their certainty in that view. In terms of Shakyamuni Buddha, people would think that, oh, the Buddha is great, the God is great, and they're all inconceivable, they're all great. They would think that, oh, Shakyamuni Buddha is great, the Manjushri Bodhisattva is great, Avalokiteshvara is great, but they don't understand anything about them. So throughout your studying and contemplation, you should understand who Shakyamuni Buddha is, just as I would recommend you to study the Pramana Vartika and how he and why Shakyamuni Buddha his teaching is the truth. When we listen to the teacher, and then when we read it, and when we contemplate it again and again through our, in fact, through the understanding of how Shakyamuni Buddha's wisdom and his inner realization and the inference and so on, you'll be able to understand if Shakyamuni Buddha has the greatest wisdom in this world. So you have to really observe by yourself and not through other people's words or their opinion. The scientists, the literatures and so on, they only understand the worldly knowledge, but they don't understand emptiness, that is the ultimate truth. They don't don't understand the profound teaching on the dependent arising. Let's even look at the great scientists, including Einstein, Newton, or philosophers such as Aristotle and so on. They don't even understand the truth of emptiness. They don't even understand the level or have the realization of arhats. So we really need to observe in such a way. The truth of the ultimate truth and the relative truth. In fact, you have to observe with great depth, and then you'll be able to understand that indeed Shakyamuni Buddha gave such teachings. I just remembered a verse from the 400 verses from Madhyamika. Do you remember? It says that if someone even have any doubts, and if that person could observe with emptiness, then he could Correct. Good. You remembered, so I'll reward you a pen. A camel received 2 pens as a reward. Wow, I somehow got to 400 verses of Madhyamika. Okay, so that was the teaching. Well, my logic probably wasn't so clear anyhow. So today, let's get to the actual teaching, where let's pick up from where we left off from yesterday, where it says that Shakyamuni Buddha, with his great wisdom and his supreme power to liberate the sentient beings who are extremely stubborn, and then all the other Buddhas from 10 directions send their attendants to pay reverence to the Buddha. And at that time, the Tathagata smiled. The Tathagata's smile, in fact, is not an ordinary smile. Any kinds of activities or expressions that's made by the Tathagata are not of no reason. According to the 400 verses of Madhyamika, it says that all the actions carried out by the Tathagatas are not without reason. Even the in-breath and out-breath that's taken by the Buddha are for the benefit of sentient beings. Sometimes when the Buddha smiles, and then he would radiate great brilliant light. Sometimes the light would be radiated from the crown, from the center of the eyebrows, and sometimes from the heart center, sometimes from the whole body. But over here, it didn't really specify where it generated or it radiated the great brilliant light. And then it says that radiant trillions of great bright lights, which like clouds, it means that it's manifold, or it's a lot, just as the cloud offering of Samadabhadra, it means that it could permeate the whole world. The great brilliant light over here It says that among these were the bright lights of great perfection. The great bright lights, according to the Sutrayana and Mantrayana, there are many different kinds of ways of explaining it. You can think of it according to the Mantrayana's way of explanation. You can think of it as the luminosity of mind. That could be considered as a cloud, the cloud of brilliance. But in terms of Sutrayana, we can think of how the Tathagata could then generate great light to dispel ignorance. There are different ways of explanation, so I'm not going to expand over here too much. Anyhow, all the lights are great lights. Everything has a connotation where it says great or brilliant. Among these were bright lights of great perfection, great mercy and compassion, supreme wisdom, great prajna, great samadhi, great shrivata, great blissful virtues, great meritorious virtues, great refuge, and great praise. There are many ways of explaining them. Each of them have different explanations, and you can then, based on your own understanding or based on the commentaries that's explained by great masters previously, so you can read into it. Over here, the great brilliant lights. Many people, many of our practitioners often say that, oh, they really enjoy the lights. There's brilliant lights, there's rainbow, there's the light, and so on. In fact, there's so many kinds of light in the city. There are all different types of light. But the Buddha's compassionate light, the light of wisdom, the light of prajna, the light of great auspiciousness, those are all kinds of light. You can think of it in such a way. When you go on pilgrimage and so on, you can receive different kinds of blessings. Sometimes it's manifested on the external phenomena, and sometimes it could manifest in such a way. On one hand, the Buddha would bring great lights to the sentient beings, but sometimes those are the lights that cannot be perceived by our eyes, such as the light of great compassion and the great joy and great equanimity. Your wisdom and compassion, your samadhi, all of those kind of inner qualities cannot be perceived by eyes. Therefore, the sentient beings could receive the wisdom and compassion and samadhi because the light of the Buddha has already permeated to the mind stream of all sentient beings. So I think, in fact, the Buddha's light can be perceived by each and every sentient beings at all times. That's one aspect. After radiating this inexpressible bright lights, the Tathagata released all kinds of subtle and wondrous sounds. The lights can be seen by the eyes, and then the sounds can be perceived by the ears. Different kind of lights and sounds, in fact, they have all different kinds of changes. So let's look at the sounds. Among these sounds are the sounds of dana paramita, that is almgiving or generosity paramita, shila paramita, moral precepts paramita, shanti paramita, that is perfect patience paramita, and virya paramita, that is diligence paramita, dhyana paramita, that is meditation paramita, and prajna paramita, the great wisdom paramita, mercy and compassion, rejoicing and abandonment and deliverance, non-outflow, wisdom, great wisdom, lion's roar, great lion's roar, the sound of Tathagata's voice echoing like thunder and echoing like great thunder. So those are all kinds of sounds that's audible. when the Buddha is turning the Dharma wheel for the sentient beings, at first he radiates all these lights and then the great sounds. The sounds, in fact, it doesn't necessarily mean the audible sounds that we can hear, such as the sound of a conch, but it means that the special kind of sound, such as samadhi or the dhyana paramita, wisdom paramita, or you can understand through different kinds of sounds that in your mind stream you'll be able to generate compassion, generate dhyana, generate mercy, and so on. You can understand it in such a way. With the audible sound, people's mind stream can generate the great merit of worldly merit and transcending merit. I remember I came to Larangar back in 1985, and in 1986, because the second year, Pongso Rinpoche would then want to make the pilgrimage to the Mount Wutai, and before that, Pongso Rinpoche was propagating the chanting of Manjushri mantra around Kham area, and he asked everyone to chant Manjushri mantra for 100 million times. And then we went to lots of those areas, Dao, Garze, and Luo, and Kham area, and so on, many different monasteries, over 70 of them, and to each different area, then Pongso Rinpoche would put a large speaker, and he would play the songs of Tsamyang Gyatso. It was quite auspicious. Each and every county and village we passed by, he would play the sound really loudly. At that time, because we just got ordained, we were very curious and really happy. Also, there's no strict rules against of playing music so loud. And Pongso Rinpoche's car was not so great. It was a Jeep, and there are some cars that were just trucks, and so they all have large speakers, and to each different place he would play loud sound of Brahmasambhava mantra as well as the song of Tsamyang Gyatso, because each person's habit is very different. Some people would come out because they're really curious, and some people would weep because of genuine devotion and faith. Sometimes I see that happens still nowadays. It's just very rarely that people don't like to listen to it, and then that's not really good. Anyhow, Pongso Rinpoche said that at this time it is to let people to plant the virtuous roots. I'm sure he had his hidden meanings, but we didn't really understand why he did it that way. Anyhow, people heard the loud sound, they would then come out, and then some people would fold their hands and would cry. In fact, the majority of them would do that. Sometimes it is because of the hidden meaning, the sacred meaning of the great masters and bodhisattvas, so that the sentient beings can rely on the sound and picture and the visuals, and then they would generate faith, and in such a way they will be liberated. At the opening of our classes, there are the tradition of blowing the conch, some blowing the conch or drumming and so on. All these kind of sounds are very necessary. Usually at the after class, we should chant more Guru Rinpoche's mantra. Our lead chanter should chant more, but because our chanter is very, he's actually very careful and reserved with his voice. Therefore, he would only chant it for 3 times, sometimes only 2, and he would stop very abruptly. I think it would be good to play that sound longer. I was telling the chanter the other day, could you maybe get another person to chant with you, because with your voice alone, it sounds just a little too lonely. And he invited someone to sit with him, but he kept the speakerphone to himself only. I've been observing him for the last few days.
对吧？今天的课就这样吧，好吧。
Well, good. Let's finally get to our class today. So let's continue. And over here it says, the release of these immeasurable bright lights and various kinds of subtle and wondrous sounds summoned countless millions of the 8 classes of supernatural beings from the Saha world and other lands to assemble in the palace of Kstigarbha's heaven. They're now all gathered in the Kstigarbha's heaven. Let's look at the ones coming from celestial realms first. They're the ones coming from the celestial realms of the realms of desire, realms of form and formless realm. It is widely, extensively taught in Abhidharma as well as treasury of wish-fulfilling jewel and Yogacarya Shastra, so I'm not going to expand too much over here. The first group, they come from 4-directional Devaraja's heaven, Kstigarbha's heaven, Suyama, and Tushita. That's where Maitreya Bodhisattva is, and Nirmanarati and Paranimittava Savarti. So those celestial beings then came to the Kstigarbha's heaven. It will be easy for them to travel to Kstigarbha's heaven because they all belong to the desire realm. And then let's look at the ones coming from the form realm. The form realm has 4 dhyanas. Let's look at the ones from the first dhyana. There are the Brahma Kiyaka and then Brahma Purohita and Mahabrahma. Then from the second dhyana, there are the ones coming from minor light heaven, infinite light heaven, and light sound heaven. From the third dhyana, the minor purity heaven, the infinite purity heaven, and the universal pure heaven. The names are the same as it is stated in Abhidharma, but it's a little bit different. And then let's look at the ones from the 4th dhyana. So there are the ones coming from the realms such as blissful birth heaven, broad fruition heaven, and no thought heaven. In fact, they are the ones, the beings around these from these realms are the ones have not attained realization yet. The no thought heaven actually belongs to the broad fruition heaven, is part of that. Now let's look at the next. There are the ones coming from no trouble heaven, no heat heaven, beautiful heaven, well appearing heaven, and end of form heaven. Those are the ones where the ones who attained realization, that's where they would abide. And then Mahishvara and neither thinking nor not thinking heaven. In fact, the Mahishvara all the way to the neither thinking nor not thinking heaven. Ishvara is the one who abide in Mahameshvara heaven. He abides in neither thinking nor not thinking heaven, and that is the highest of the form heaven. So there is the sphere of infinite space and the sphere of nothingness, and then there's the neither thinking nor not thinking heaven. So that's really the top of it. According to the treasury of wish-fulfilling jewel, it says that there are the four formless heaven, and in fact it says formless, but there are some very subtle form. But because of the position of it, there are different names for it, but it is definitely going up levels by levels. According to Abhidharma, it then seems according to Abhidharma, it says that the formless realm doesn't have any form, and then whenever the beings die in that area, they would then abide in the meditative states for 80,000 kalpas, and that's the celestial beings in the formless realm. But it's a little bit different. In Longchenpa's treasury of wish-fulfilling jewel, there are lots of quotes, and it's quite extensive. Sometimes he would talk quite a bit about non-Buddhist perspective, and sometimes he would expand quite a bit on the overview of the world. Many great masters pay great attention to the treasury of wish-fulfilling jewels. I only received the oral transmission, but never really studied it. So nowadays, when I'm translating it, I feel that I'm not sure what it's talking about yet, because it kept on talking about the non-Buddhist practitioners' perspective, and for a long period of time. I think Longchenpa could be very interesting, especially when he talks about the formless realm. He would talk about it for a long period of time. Anyhow, since I made the vow to translate the 7 treasuries, I've already finished the first volume, but it's really thick, so there's still second half of the volume. And now we've finished talking about the 3 realms: the realm of desire, of form, of formless. For those of you who've studied Abhidharma, you probably are very clear of where they are, but for the ones who never study Abhidharma, you probably have no idea and just listening with no clue at all. And then it says that the multitude of the 8 classes of supernatural beings came to assemble in the palace of Trimsha's heaven. Also deities from other lands and Saha world came to gatherings, such as deities of the seas. In fact, all the Nagas also was there. Nagas could all fly to the Trimsha's heaven, not necessarily the kind of Nagas or dragons that's in the movies nowadays. And then all the ghosts and spirits are there as well. The ones such as the deities of the seas, rivers, and trees. Mountains, earth, lakes, crops, day, night, space, sky, food, and vegetation, all these and other deities assembled there. The different bodies of water, they all have their deities as well. In fact, there are people nowadays who don't acknowledge, or who don't really want to acknowledge that there are deities for different water or mountains and so on. They don't want to acknowledge that at all. But whenever they get tricked or bothered by those deities, they have to admit to it. There were some government officials who didn't want to admit to that, but later on he got into trouble with some of those evil spirits. Lots of people who only consider that this world consists of material, very materialistic, but with that kind of materialistic view, you won't be able to explain everything that happens in this world. If you don't make those spirits of the mountains or the earth happy, then they could trick you. They could create troubles and different calamities. And when they're happy, they could bring us lots of favorable conditions. And so if you don't believe in them, and if you don't pay respect, then it could bring you lots of obstacles. That is why, in fact, we sometimes do the smoke offering. That could be very helpful for the different deities and spirits. And some of them, in fact, are of the they're currently in Hungry Ghost realm. Some of them are in the animal realm. They're quite. It is quite a pity that they have to suffer in that way. Anyhow, sometimes we can't see them, we can't hear them, but we cannot deny the existence of them. In Buddhism, there are lots of descriptions of that, so we have to acknowledge that. And then there are the spirits from streams and rivers, and from day and night. Some of the deities probably go to work during the day. Some of them have evening shifts. And if you don't pay attention in the evening after class, when you are walking on the road and walking back home, and you probably would meet the night deity. And then you will get scared, especially if there's no lights. And then this deity of sky, different deities, and then deity of food. In the ancient times, it usually refers to the cooking platform, or sometimes when you don't cook well and it doesn't smell good, and then the spirits of food won't be very happy, and then vegetations as well. In fact, if we were to chant the name of Ksitigarbha's name, in fact, all of them can be tamed. Shall we talk about the ghosts as well? Today, they are also came from other lands and Saha worlds, such great ghost kings as the evil eye ghost king, blood-drinking ghost king, the ones who drink the blood of sentient beings, and vital energy-consuming ghost king, the kind of a ghost king who would consume the vital energy of people. There are people who don't have good energy every day and who get sick very easily. Those are the ones sometimes are influenced by the vital energy consuming ghost king. Then you can communicate with them, saying that you shouldn't, please don't consume my vital energy. I'm just joking over there. And then the ova fetus devouring ghost king, and the disease spreading ghost king, such as the disease that's spread right nowadays. If the sentient beings does not please the disease-spreading ghost king, then they would bring all different kinds of flu and bird flu and COVID and different kinds of epidemics and so on, such as pestilence and all of that. It is because they're not happy about the sentient being's action. And the poison halting ghost king, and that is more related to the nowadays the drug problems. There are young people who get very much addicted to drugs, and that is related to the poison halting ghost king. And once people get trouble with those, and then they will lose their freedom. And then compassionate ghost king. In fact, there are lots of ghost kings who do have great compassion. People would say that Ashura, Rakshas, and Yakshas, they're not good. In fact, in my eyes, I think some of them are better than us. Some Ashuras and Rakshas and Yakshas, they are quite compassionate, especially when I'm contacting them and they're I'm quite compassionate, so I have lots of good friends who are Shuras and Rakshas and so on. And then the blessing bestowing ghost king, great love respect bestowing king, these and other ghost kings also came to assemble to the treasure stream just heaven. So let's stop over here today.
Sonam dei tamche zubanya tona nibe jana panshi jirga nanji ranlong chubai chubum tsone jowa